Good morning. My name is Brittany Mejia, and I'm here with Miss Hallie Holmes. And we are here on the part of the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program at the University of Florida. So, Miss Hallie, why don't you start with your date of birth and where you were born?
My date of birth is September the 25th, 1950, and I was born in Richmond, Virginia.
Okay. And could you say a little bit about your childhood and your parents and what it was like growing up here?
Well, I'm the youngest of 6 siblings. When I was a kid, we just had the basics lifestyle, nothing fancy. I can remember moving into our very first home. I hadn't even started school. And it's like we moved from one side of Route 17 over to the other side of Route 17. So we were still at home because we could walk back and forth to my grandparents' home.
Okay. And growing up, was there anything special that your family did for like Christmas and holidays?
Everybody got together. We had a big feast. At Thanksgiving and Christmas, it was so unique. My grandmother and my mother canned a lot. You know,
They canned?
They canned peaches, tomatoes, string beans, that kind of stuff. They did it all.
Did they grow it themselves?
Yeah, they grew it themselves.
Wow.
Yeah. And my grandmother, when she would open a jar of tomatoes, she would they would be whole, and she would be able to slice them, and it seemed like she had just picked them out the garden.
Oh, wow.
That's what I thought was so unique, that she could open that jar of tomatoes and slice them.
Oh, that's really
real fresh taste. Yeah.
So
We made their own breads. Everything was made at home. They had their own pork, beef, raised their own chickens.
wow. What was your favorite food?
Their favorite foods? Mine's rolls, the homemade rolls.
Oh, yeah?
Oh my God, yes. Nobody in the family has conquered that, making their homemade breads.
Who made it, your mom?
My grandmother. And my grandfather had the technique for biscuits, making homemade biscuits. And to have stayed with them for a while, he would be the first one down in the morning and make fire. We had wood stoves. And he would make the fire, get the house nice and warm, and especially in the winter time. And he would get the breakfast started. The coffee, you could hear the coffee in the old style percolators. Yeah.
So was there anything else that you think was unique about the way that you got to grow up?
Well, we were taught to work. I think from the time we started to walk and work, if you want to have something, you went to work. So we did little jobs around the home, and they had a farm, and you went out, worked the farm.
How big was your farm?
About 35 acres.
Oh, that's a nice farm.
Yeah, 35 acres.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you know how long your family has been here in Virginia?
I know since 1800.
At least the 1800s?
The land that I am on now, it's been in the family since 1800.
1890?
1800s.
1800s.
Yeah.
Wow.
And my grandparents bought that property, barely making, as the story is told, barely making 10 cents an hour
Wow.
back in those times, and was able to pay their taxes and all.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about how I was going to school in Middlesex?
Well, when we started out, it was all blacks, of course. I started, it was a 3-room school, Antioch School.
I was there. At the Whale Center. It's a Whale Center now. Across the street from the church?
Antioch School across the street from a jail.
From a jail?
Yeah, right up in Saluda. Yeah, when y'all came to the light in Saluda, like, and you keep straight through that light, and our church is on the left, and the jail is on the right-hand side. But there was a school down the road, just behind the church, that I started out, a 3-room school with 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. And that was my early education there. And then we start condensing the schools. Then I went to Shallow School in the 4th and the 5th grade. And then when they built a new school, which is Rappahannock Central, I went there in the 6th and the 7th grade. And then in the 8th grade, going to high school, it was St. Clare Walker High School up until 1969. And then that's when the schools were totally integrated.
Did you get to experience that?
Yes. Yeah.
How was that?
It was unique. It was a scary time. It was really scary because I felt like if the white people had wanted us there, why not have done it from the beginning? Even though we had some people in the community with that decision, Brown versus the Board of Education, equal but fair, we still had, I think it was 6 or 8 kids, black kids. The parents enrolled them, in the white high schools. So, but it became mandatory in 1969. That was the last year of St. Clare Walker.
So you said schools were integrated your senior year? Oh, wow. So you got the last, opportunity.
Yeah.
And you were older, so, do you feel that because you were older, you kind of had, a better sense of what was going on?
And I had a sense of what was going on, but it was also a scary time because why mess, to me, why mess with something if it's not broken? I thought we were getting a good education on our level, black high schools. And what can the white teachers tell us? That was my thought process. What can they tell us about us? I feel like somehow that we were shortchanged. We may have gained a lot, but as a blacks, we lost a lot.
Okay. So do you feel like because you had black teachers at your black school that you you were taught in ways that spoke to you, or
We had, when we walked into a classroom, you look at your black instructors, your black teachers, but that's where we want to be. You know, they have gone through the hard times and gotten their education and came back to the black schools to teach us, the younger ones that are coming up, you know. That's what I looked at. And I felt like when the schools integrated, we lost a lot of black teachers in the process.
How were relationships with your white teachers?
It wasn't good. It wasn't great. There was nothing to look forward to it. As a matter of fact, when I went to Middlesex High School, it was this one white student that I remember so very well. Whenever the blacks went to her and asked her a question, she would always take time and answer us. She didn't shun away from us.
Was this a student or a teacher?
It was a student.
Really?
Yeah. And I sometimes think that she got ostracized for it, as being real friendly towards the blacks.
Do you remember her name?
Yeah. Yes.
Is it okay for you to say her name? Or?
Yeah. Kate Thomas.
Kate Thomas.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Was there anyone else in your community that you felt positively about integration, or they tried to make it easier?
I don't know if it was more of a scary time because we didn't know what was going to happen to us. We just felt like a part of us was being taken away.
What about do you have brothers?
Yes.
What were their feelings towards it?
Well, I'm the youngest. I'm 64 years old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so everybody else had graduated and gone on.
Were they afraid for you?
Huh?
Were they afraid for you, your senior year?
I think so. It was just, why mess with us? Like I said, I understood the decision of real court case, Brown versus the Board of Education. You would have to have lived it to understand it. You're being taken out of a comfort zone and put into an unknown place. As you know, there were racial tensions. I remember the riots. I remember the blacks wouldn't dare mix with the whites here in the county. It was forbidden.
For like interracial relationships?
Yeah, it was forbidden.
You said that you remember riots. What do you remember?
A white female and a black male even it wasn't a good thing. It wasn't. We had cross burnings in the yard. It didn't happen to us, but I know a family that it did. It was a scary time. It was scary.
So would you say that it was violent?
We didn't experience the violence like some of the other areas of the United States experienced when the schools were fully integrated. I want to say it was Arkansas, where it was some kids, I think it was about 8 or 12 kids, that were...
Oh, Little Rock,
Arkansas, right.
They had to bring the National Guard and everything to escort them.
We didn't have that here, but we know there was resistance about it.
Well, how did you hear about those things?
Through my parents, through TV. We were fortunate to have a TV. I can remember that I was 5 years old. My mother came to us and asked us what did we want for Christmas. We wanted a TV, because everybody else somewhat had TVs and we didn't have a TV. So she looked at us, her and Dad said, well, if you get this TV, that's all y'all gonna get for Christmas. And we were just as happy as we could be to get that TV.
Do you have any other childhood memories that stick out to you growing up here in Middlesex?
We had our own little stores. We didn't have to go to the white people's stores. Had our own little gas stations. Auto repair people. We had our own little restaurants, our own little juke joints, as you would call them sometimes. Our own dance halls. And of course, we had our own churches, our own schools. So basically, we didn't really have to rely on the white man.
Right.
We had farmers. We had business owners. We had watermen, the black men that would go out and work the river, oystermen, fishing to make a living. We were self-sufficient.
And from what you can tell, what happened to these businesses?
And this, when I come in and say, we gained a lot, but we lost a lot. And it just seems like the blacks, as they got older, the older ones, as they got older, I guess due to the laws and regulations, to close the businesses if you don't have this in place, if you don't have that in place. And I don't know why the families of those that had businesses, why they didn't stick together and keep it going. I don't understand that part of it. You know, it's tough it out, stick it out, you know. Even today, for some reason, it's hard for a black in this county to open a restaurant and keep it going. We can hear of one, and before we can even get up to go, you know, well, it's done closed. It didn't open. And we're asking why. So that's why I'm saying over the years, due to the integration, we gained a lot, but we lost a lot.
Do you think, how do you feel that your family either gained or lost from?
We haven't, our family, we have braced the storms of life in this county. We been here, seemed like forever and a day, and it was instilled in us to do what you can, do like you're supposed to. Don't let anybody take anything from you. Obey the laws, even sometimes you might be against it, but you do what you're supposed to do. To keep your land, of course, you pay your taxes. And I saw people, my grandparents and other people in the community, if they had to go without, they made sure that they paid their taxes at all costs. Because land for the blacks is a precious thing.
Do you have any stories shared to you by your parents about maybe their life and their time in Middlesex, or your grandparents?
They had it hard. From what they had it hard. My grandmother on my mother's side, now she came to Middlesex as a nanny for a white family. And when she moved here, that's when my grandmother met her husband, Walter Carr, and they got married. And from that union, only one daughter, one child.
And that was your mother?
And that was my mother. But my father, my father's father and mother. Now the story was told that his great grandfather came here on a ship from England, but we haven't really fully researched that part of it. I remember listening to my grandparents talking about the old steamship that would come into Urbana, steamboat from Urbana up to Maryland, Baltimore.
From Cuba?
No, from Baltimore to Urbana, and the ship would go back to Maryland, back and forth like that. But getting back to my great great-grandfather, like I said, it was always told to us that the Holmeses came here to the county by way of a ship from England. So, but we have never really researched that.
And do you know anything about the lifestyle that they had to live, or perhaps your parents had to live here?
Their lifestyle was basically hard working people, they scraped and saved to have something. They went to church. Said first and foremost, that was a God-given thing. You get up, you went to church. They walked to church.
Was it far?
Now, from where my father lived, to walk to the church next door here, Calvary Baptist Church, they had to walk probably about 10 miles.
And they'd go every Sunday?
They would go every Sunday. But they never missed a Sunday listening to them talking.
Were you brought up in church?
Yes. And I got away from it because as you got older, you want to go out and work. So Sundays, the jobs that I had require you to work on Sundays.
Okay. So can you tell me a little bit about your husband and how you met him?
I've never been married.
You've never been married?
No.
So you don't have any children either?
Well, I have 2 daughters.
Okay.
And I have 3 grandchildren and was made a great-grandmother in August.
So do you plan on passing your land over to your daughters?
Yes.
Yeah. Are you farming now still?
Am I?
Like your land, do you own like hens and stuff?
Yeah. The land that we have here, that's what we are planning to do, is pass it down to the generations to come.
Okay.
And they have been stressed. You pay your taxes. The land is paid for. All you have to do is pay the taxes. Twice a year, pay your taxes. You budget yourself for that.
Yeah. And your daughters, what do they do? How old are they?
My oldest daughter is 44. The youngest is 42.
Okay. What are they, like teachers, or what do they work as?
My oldest daughter is a nurse. My youngest daughter, she's a fast food worker.
Okay. And they all live here in Middlesex? Okay.
Yeah. My father, I almost missed an important part. My father was the first black sheriff of Middlesex.
What?
Yeah. Joshua Holmes. And at the age of 65, he was approached to be a night watchman for the town of Urbana. So he took it. And then we had a sheriff, Roland Hall, that came to my dad and talked with him about becoming his chief deputy. And so my dad went ahead, stepped out there on faith with the family support, community support. And with events to come into place, Mr. Allen Hall resigned, which made my father the head sheriff. And there were all sorts of things being said. My father did not graduate from high school. He never made it to high school. And they were concerned that he couldn't read nor write. But he managed to go to Old Dominion University for his schooling to learn how to become a sheriff and graduated.
So he went back to school at the age of 65?
He went to ODU when they had classes training to becoming a sheriff. Yes.
Wow.
He made it. And he was able to get to do all his other training, in service programs on becoming a sheriff and whatnot. And when the election time, they had to hold a special election, and he won that with a landslide. And then they had another election he won. So my father was in law enforcement here in the county from 1970 to 1983.
Oh, wow.
So that was a privilege. It was a great honor. And he helped open the doors because there were no blacks working in the businesses here in the county. There was a black girl that ended up working at a bank. There was a black girl that worked at a dry cleaning. Yeah.
So was it hard for African Americans to integrate in the job force?
Yeah, it was. It was. It was. We had jobs doing white people laundry out of Saluda. We would go pick it up or they would bring it to us. Cleaning houses, caregivers, taking care of the white people kids. Your basic jobs. Those are the jobs that we had.
And was your mom a homemaker? Or did she work?
My mother worked out as well. I remember as a kid, my mother worked out so much, which left my sister, which is the oldest. I didn't know who my mom was. I always called my sister Mama because Mom had to work.
What kind of jobs did she do?
Worked at a canning factory, a local canning factory. Lord Mott, that was over in Urbana. Oyster shucking.
Oyster shucking?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have any stories about either your mom or your dad that they shared with you of them working?
Working long, hard hours. And oyster shucking was not an easy job. It was wet, it was dirty, it was muddy. And at the canning factory, they stood at a assembly line, and when the fruits or the vegetables would come around, they had the task of putting it in a can and having a machine to seal that can. And it was fast work. And one day something happened at the factory. It had employed a lot of people, and it blew up. But thank God my mom wasn't there.
Thank God.
Which put a dent as far as people having jobs. People,
What year was that?
huh?
Do you remember what year that was?
Because we heard the noise.
It was that loud?
Yeah. 19, because I had started working in Tappahannock in 1970. It was, I want to say it was 64, maybe 65.
Were the people who were working there, were they mostly people of color?
It were mostly people of color. And the white people had, to us, the supervisory jobs, working in the office. Yeah. There were no blacks doing that part of it.
What was there anyone in the community that was there that passed on, that caused an impact in the community? Like, was there a funeral afterwards?
When we my age group, you had respect for everybody in the community. If an older person said something to you, you respected that person. You didn't talk back to them. So everybody, and I'm saying older ones, they had an impact from the church, the school, right on down the line. We had black undertakers. We had stores, a store that we could walk to. But the people that impacted the community the most were your ministers and teachers. Those are the people in the community when I was a child that had the greatest impact on the communities.
I want to go back a little bit and talk about your dad and his job when he was a sheriff.
Yeah.
What was he able to share to you about that job?
Well, I grew up with my dad. And actually I helped to do some of the typing, some of the stuff, the policy and procedures, helping my dad and Mr. Ryland Hall to put some of the things into play.
So you wrote up some of the legislation and paperwork.
Yeah, the SOPs, the standard operating policy and procedure. So that now, mind you, you're in a community. What is this man doing? But over time, they had a great respect for my dad.
Was there any resistance at first?
There was some resistance. The board, they had one person that so vividly stands out, and it was printed in the paper. He can't read nor write. What good is he? So that's when he was able to ODU, Old Dominion University, and go there, take the classes, the necessary classes that helped him to be a sheriff at the age of 65. Without it, that didn't graduate from high school.
And he was able to learn how to read and write.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It was an honor and a privilege for that time frame.
And what type of...
Now, mind you, he came from a family of people. His father told him, "You're going to work on the river. Now you're working for your dad, and your dad will pay you 5 cents. But you take that 5 cents, you bring it home and give it to your mother," was what he did. And my father came from a family. It was 8. 5 girls and 3 boys.
Before he became a sheriff, what was he doing?
His basic job, he worked a little bit construction. I remember him saying, working at the Naval Weapons Station in Yorktown, Virginia. His most job was working the rivers for a living, being an oysterman and a fisherman. He worked the Potomac rivers, the James River, the Rappahannock River, James River, Potomac, Rappahannock, yeah.
How do you feel that Middlesex has changed? Being able to look back and see how things are now.
Things are getting better. They are getting better, but I don't know if it will ever be what we want it to be, because as older ones are dying out and you have people moving back home or influx of other people coming in, your different nationalities, you bring in fresh ideas, new ideas to improve this, improve that, to make it better here in the county. Now we are seeing a better cohesiveness on some of your same issues. When it comes to health care, helping the needy people, making your community a better place. Now we still have our separate churches, but that still hasn't come into one, like in your larger areas, I think. So all nationalities can join in as one. You have a few every now and then, other nationalities that will come in. And sometimes blacks will go to the other white people churches. I don't know the other way to put it. Yeah. And I'm going to say for myself, the jobs that I've had, starting as a child, was doing laundry, walking up and down the farm lane, doing the fertilizer, holding a bucket and taking it and throwing it on the land by hand. I have shucked oysters. I have done home health care. I have worked in the food service industry. I have worked in the department stores. I have worked law enforcement 25 years right here in the county, working at the jail. I retired as a booking officer. I looked at other people, black people that stay here in the county that have somehow managed to make it here, survive here, without having to make a whole lot of money versus some of the people that have moved on, got good jobs and then moved back later on in life. What happens when people move away from home, and I always felt like this was your obligation. You're going to send money back home to help out or to keep paying your taxes to hold on to that land. And sometimes I've seen people, well, when they want to move back home, they haven't paid the taxes on the property, the real estate taxes. So the land gets sold after a certain period of time. Then they don't have nothing to come back to, so they have to start from scratch. Buying land somewhere else in the county to put a home.
So it seems to me like two of the things that really stand out to you that your parents taught you was to pay your taxes.
Yeah.
And to always work hard.
Yeah.
To keep what you have.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there are any other lessons that they really instilled in you?
My father said this. He said, I didn't go to school like you all did. He said, but go to school, learn how to read and write and think for yourself. Learn how to count money. My father would leave home, going to work, early in the mornings. We didn't even see him for breakfast, certainly not for lunch, and we'd be gone to bed at night. Never saw him unless it was maybe a Saturday or a Sunday. He always, and I say they because my mom too, made sure that we had what we needed, even if she went without. I remember my mom and dad buying their first home. Now, I was almost 6 years old. And we had lived with grandmother all that time. So that was pretty significant.
Yeah.
Yeah. My sister, she graduated from St. Clare Walker in 1959 and went to Philadelphia. My oldest brother, he left home at the age of 17. My mother and father had to sign the papers for him. He went in the army. And my next brother, he graduated from high school. He went to Philadelphia, and from Philadelphia, he went into the army, and he only stayed the necessary time. I think it was like 3 years. Then he returned to Philadelphia. Then my next brother, Woodrow, now he stayed right here in the area, working at that time. He was employed by Chesapeake Corporation in West Point. Then my next brother, which I never knew because mother and father said that he died when he was 6 months old, than me. Yeah. And I have stayed in the area. I could have gone, left the area, but I said, well, let me stay here. I said, if anything happened to my mom and dad, I'll be right here. If anything happened, I could be here. I won't have to worry about picking up, packing, and coming back. I'll be right here to help them. And I said, the Lord will give me something, provide a way for me to survive here, which he did. So,
Are you still living in the same home that you grew up in?
no, unfortunately, my brother Elmore, when he moved home, and that's where he was staying, the house was destroyed by fire. When he was asleep, when he woke up, he was on fire.
What year was this?
And just by the grace of God, he crawled out, got in his car, drove to my sister's house to tell her the house was on fire, and he drove back to the house. And my sister called me, and we all jumped up, went out, and the house was completely inflamed. It was engulfed in flame. A 3-story brick house.
A 3-story brick
It
house?
had a basement, then the first level, it had the kitchen, the dining room, the living room, a bathroom, and 1 bedroom. Then there was the upstairs with nothing but bedrooms and an attic.
Did you ever find out what caused the fire?
It was electrical. It was an old house. The house was built in 1945, and my mother and father purchased it when I was almost 6 years old because I hadn't even started school.
Do you remember how old you were or what year the fire was?
The fire was in 2012.
Oh, wow.
So it's relatively recent in a way. And my brother came within minutes of losing his life. And as we speak today, he is in the hospital. He had to be put in yesterday evening, running. He has pneumonia.
How do you feel that growing up here in Middlesex and everything that you've experienced, how do you feel that that's affected your family and your community?
It goes back to grandparents that laid the foundation for us. They really laid a good foundation for us on how to make it, how to survive in this county. I had something, personal experience that one day when I was giving my oldest daughter her lane to put her home, her and her husband, and we was in the courthouse, and this white man, he was on his way out, and we were on our way in. So he turns around and came back and was kind of like listening to what we were doing. And I said, "Look, sir, we're not messing with any of your land, even though your son has property adjoining us." I said, "We have enough land of our own. We're not messing with nothing belonging to you." So he turned around and walked out. You know, we have enough to survive. I retired working in 2010. I've been a caregiver dating back to 1995. Started being a caregiver for my mother, grandmother, my grandfather. So we was taught as a childhood thing, you take care of your own.
Right.
That was they did the groundwork. You take care of your own. Because we didn't have nursing homes way back then for us. So we took care of our own in the homes. I think to me, that's a tradition. And for some people, it still holds today. You take care of your own. Do the best that you can with what you have.
When you said you got to take care of your grandmother,
Uh-huh.
do you remember when she was born? Do you know the year?
My grandmother lived to be 108 years old.
You're lying.
No, I'm not. I am not. Even at the age of 100, people would come far and near and just sit and talk with her. At the age of 100, we had a party out of this world. But she walked and talked up until the day she died. She was 108 years old. So my sister had went down to the house to check on her, give her evening meal. And my sister called me. She said, Jean, I don't think Grandmama feeling good. I said, I'll be right down there. And whatever was going on, like a seizure, whatever, it had stopped. And she was sitting there talking with everybody just like nothing had happened. And I told my sister, I said, go ahead and call the rescue squad just in case. Because I said, we don't know what's going on. And while they were coming, when they got there, Liz, she was sitting there talking. To show you how close the community was, she knew and talked to everybody that came with the rescue squad. Talked to every one of them. And then she went into having another seizure. And my sister said, this is what happened before. I said, well, I'm going to get up and walk her down the hall and let her get on the bed. Just by the grace of God, the rescue squad people were still there. They came to the room and got her. She was bound and determined she was going to die at home. So they got her in the rescue squad. And they started out to Route 17, because where her house is in Route 17, it's about a half a mile from the main drag of Route 17. The rescue squad stopped. And I was driving the car and told my sister, I said, I just did not get a good feeling about this. And they worked on it. They worked on it. And when they took off, of course, they took off with the sirens and the lights going. And they were going just as fast as they could. And by the time they got to the hospital in Gloucester, the Walter Reed Hospital, then they got her in the hospital and whatnot. And that's what she was pronounced dead. But she walked and talked up until the second she died. The greatest thing with her house caught on fire. Her original house. And when we looked, it was an old frame house, 2-story house. We just had this God fear that she was still in the house. She had burned in the house. I had a nephew, and by him being tall, we always swore up and down he only made 3 stops between his place and my grandmother's house because he could run fast. And he would just stand down there, with his hands in the air. Grandma gone, Grandma gone. And we was calling her name. And she said, I'm down here, I'm down here. She had walked to another neighbor's place, standing there. What she had did, when she realized the fire, she said, well, I can't get another Hallie, because her name was Hallie too. I was named after her. She said, I can't get another Hallie. She said, so I just grabbed a blanket and my pocketbook and came on out the house. She said, I can get another house. But I can't get another Hallie. So that was a learning lesson for us.
How old was she when her house burned?
She was, now this happened in the 80s. But she was born in 18. What? 9. She was over 100. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And what year did she pass?
She died in 1992. She looked at us. It was Thanksgiving. Everybody was home. And she says to us, y'all better come back Christmas, because y'all might not see me after that. And we said, oh, Grandmama, don't say that. She said, I'm serious. Y'all come back Christmas, because that's going to be the last time. And sure enough, we had this big Christmas gathering. And right after that, my brother that went in the army, the oldest brother that went in, he had gone back to North Carolina, and it seemed like he hadn't been back 3 days. And we had to call and tell him Grandmama had died and had to come back. So we have stood the test of time, adversities.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share that we didn't talk about today?
I guess there's so much. It's just my grandparents. I never knew my grandparents on my father's side, because I was real young when they died. I never had a chance to know them. But my grandparents on my mother's side, that's why I can talk so much about them. To be in the same house with them, sharing the same house with them. It's just that closeness with my grandparents on my mother's side. We had a neighbor back at that time. Her name was Miss Eleanor. And my grandmother, Miss Hallie, we always say Miss Hallie and Miss Ellen. We never, that's the way they taught us. You know, no grandma, they say Miss Hallie or Miss Ellen. But they would walk back and forth across the field and talking to each other. Well, I'll walk you home, Hallie. And then they'll get halfway to the field, there was a peach tree halfway to the field that they would stand on and talk, especially in the summertime for shade. And then Miss Hallie would say, well, Ellen, I'll walk you back home. And they get where that peach tree is, where that shade is, and they would stand there and talk. My grandmother would, when the microwave came out, oh, she was so fascinated. The ready-bake oven, that's what she called it. And she thought that was so neat. And to listen at her talk about the different modes of transportation where they have gone from walking to horse and buggy to train to cars and then airplanes. To experience that. And TV, of course, telephone, electricity, going from not having electricity to having electricity. Those are the things that we were grateful for. They came from a real tight community, looked out for one another, always would tell us that regardless of what go on across the field, you look out for them, you help them out. And it's still being carried on in that community where we live. And we pick up the phone, or if we don't see somebody by a certain time, you start inquiring what's going on. Where are you? Like that.
Well, I want to thank you, Miss Holmes, for opening up to us and sharing your story. And I can't thank you enough.